The silence was deafening. Marcus Chen stared at his monitor in the dimly lit Security Operations Center of Apex Exchange, watching as transaction after transaction failed to process. The timestamp read 3:47 a.m., and what had started as routine maintenance was quickly becoming his worst nightmare. Apex Exchange wasn't just any cryptocurrency platform. With over 12 million users and daily trading volumes exceeding $2 billion, it was the fourth largest crypto exchange in the world. Marcus had been their head of security for 3 years, and in that time, he had never seen anything like this. The first sign of trouble came at 3:15 a.m. when automated alerts began flooding his dashboard. Database queries were timing out. API endpoints were returning error codes. But most concerning of all, the cold storage wallets containing over $800 million in cryptocurrency had gone completely offline. Marcus grabbed his coffee and pulled up the system logs. What he found made his blood run cold. Someone had systematically disabled every backup system, every failsafe, and every emergency protocol that Apex had spent years building. This wasn't a random hack or a simple DDoS attack. This was surgical, methodical, and devastating. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message from an unknown number. The silence you hear is the sound of your empire falling. Check your personal wallet. With trembling fingers, Marcus opened his personal cryptocurrency wallet app. His life savings, nearly $200,000 in Bitcoin and Ethereum, had vanished. Every transaction showed the same timestamp, 3:16 a.m., just 1 minute after the exchange went dark. But Marcus wasn't the only one. As dawn broke over the city, millions of Apex Exchange users around the world began to discover the same horrifying truth. Their accounts showed zero balances. Years of investments, retirement funds, college savings, and business capital had simply disappeared into the digital void. What happened next shocked the crypto world beyond anything it had ever witnessed. The Apex Exchange website displayed a single message: maintenance in progress. All services temporarily unavailable. But behind the scenes, panic was spreading through the company's headquarters like wildfire. CEO Richard Blackstone had called an emergency board meeting, and the conference room was filled with the panicked voices of executives trying to understand how their fortress had been breached. Sarah Williams, the chief technology officer, was frantically typing commands into her laptop. Every single security protocol has been bypassed, she announced to the room. Our multi-signature wallets, our air-gapped cold storage, even our hardware security modules. It's like someone had the master keys to everything. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Apex Exchange had built its reputation on being unhackable. Their marketing campaigns boasted about military-grade security, institutional-level protection, and insurance coverage that would protect users in the event of any breach. Now, all of those promises felt like lies. Detective Jennifer Rodriguez of the FBI's Cybercrime Division received the call at 6:30 a.m. She had investigated dozens of cryptocurrency thefts, but the scope of the Apex Exchange incident was unprecedented. As she drove to the company's headquarters, she couldn't shake the feeling that this case would define her career. The Apex building was in chaos when she arrived. Employees were streaming out of the exits, some carrying boxes of personal belongings. Others stood in small groups, whispering anxiously about their stock options and whether they would still have jobs by the end of the week. The parking lot was filled with news vans and reporters shouting questions at anyone who would listen. Inside, Detective Rodriguez found CEO Richard Blackstone in his corner office, staring out at the city skyline. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his tie loose around his neck, and his eyes had the hollow look of a man who had lost everything. "Mr. Blackstone, Rodriguez began, "I need to understand exactly what happened here." Blackstone turned away from the window, his voice barely above a whisper. "We trusted the wrong person." Over the next several hours, a picture began to emerge that would send shockwaves through the entire cryptocurrency industry. The attack on Apex Exchange hadn't come from some sophisticated hacking group operating from a foreign country. It hadn't been perpetrated by disgruntled employees or rival companies seeking to destroy the competition. The person responsible for silencing Apex Exchange was Dr. Elena Vasquez, the company's own chief security architect. Dr. Vasquez had joined Apex 3 years earlier with impeccable credentials. She held a PhD in computer science from MIT, had worked for the NSA's cybersecurity division, and had published groundbreaking research on blockchain security protocols. She was the architect of Apex's security infrastructure, the person who had designed every safeguard and every protection that was supposed to keep user funds safe. She was also the person who knew exactly how to bypass every single one of those protections. The investigation revealed that Dr. Vasquez had spent months preparing for her attack. She had created backdoors in the security systems, established fake maintenance protocols that would mask her activities, and even manipulated the exchange's insurance policies to ensure that users would receive minimal compensation in the event of a breach. But the most chilling discovery came when investigators searched her apartment. They found detailed psychological profiles of Apex's senior management, transcripts of private conversations recorded through compromised devices, and a manifesto that outlined her beliefs about the fundamental flaws in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. What happened next would haunt the crypto world for years to come. Dr. Vasquez hadn't simply stolen the funds and disappeared. She had done something far more destructive and far more permanent. Using her intimate knowledge of blockchain technology, she had sent all of the stolen cryptocurrency to addresses that were mathematically impossible to access. The private keys for these addresses had been generated using a process that ensured they could never be recovered, not by her, not by law enforcement, and not by anyone else. $800 million in cryptocurrency had been permanently destroyed. The manifesto found in her apartment explained her reasoning. She believed that the centralized nature of cryptocurrency exchanges was fundamentally opposed to the decentralized vision that had originally inspired Bitcoin. She saw companies like Apex as parasites feeding off a revolutionary technology, enriching themselves while exposing users to risks they didn't understand. Her plan wasn't just to steal money. It was to demonstrate the inherent vulnerability of trusting third parties with cryptocurrency. She had silenced Apex Exchange not for personal gain, but to send a message that would force the entire industry to confront its contradictions. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within days of the attack, regulators around the world began implementing emergency measures. The Securities and Exchange Commission announced new requirements for cryptocurrency exchange security. The European Union fast-tracked legislation that would require exchanges to maintain proof of reserves. Asian markets saw panic selling as investors fled to traditional assets. But the human cost was far more devastating than the regulatory response. Apex Exchange had been the primary savings account for millions of people who had put their faith in the promise of decentralized finance. Retirement funds vanished overnight, college savings disappeared, small businesses that had accepted cryptocurrency payments found their cash flows completely cut off. Marcus Chen, who had dedicated his career to protecting those users, found himself testifying before Congress about the failure of his security measures. The weight of responsibility crushed him as he faced families who had lost everything, knowing that his systems had failed them when they needed protection most. The investigation into Drive, Vasquez's whereabouts consumed law enforcement resources across multiple continents. Despite having access to some of the most sophisticated tracking technology available, she had vanished completely. Her last known location was a coffee shop in Prague, where security cameras had captured her deleting files from a laptop before walking away and disappearing into the crowd. Some investigators believed she had assumed a new identity and was living quietly somewhere in Eastern Europe. Others suspected she had been eliminated by criminal organizations angry about the destruction of funds they had been laundering through Apex Exchange. A few theorized that she had taken her own life, viewing her mission as complete. The truth would remain hidden for nearly 2 years. Detective Rodriguez never stopped pursuing the case. Even as other investigations demanded her attention, she continued following leads related to Dr. Vasquez's disappearance. She studied the manifesto, analyzed the technical details of the attack, and tried to understand the psychological profile of someone who would sacrifice their career and freedom to make a point about cryptocurrency centralization. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A blockchain analysis firm was conducting research on dormant Bitcoin addresses when they discovered something unusual. Small amounts of cryptocurrency were being moved from addresses that had been created using the same mathematical process that Dr. Vasquez had used to destroy the Apex funds. These weren't the addresses containing the stolen money. Those remained untouchable, just as Dr. Vasquez had intended. But she had apparently created other addresses using similar techniques, and someone was accessing them to make small purchases. The transactions were carefully crafted to avoid detection. Each one was for a different amount, sent to a different merchant, and timed to appear random. But the pattern recognition software identified subtle similarities that suggested they were all controlled by the same person. Rodriguez worked with international law enforcement to track the spending patterns. The purchases painted a picture of someone living modestly but comfortably. Grocery stores in small Romanian towns. Utility payments for apartments in Bucharest. Medical expenses at private clinics that didn't require identification. The net was slowly closing around Drive. Elena Vasquez. The arrest came at dawn on a Tuesday morning in a quiet neighborhood of Brasov, Romania. Dr. Vasquez had been living under the name Maria Popescu, working as a freelance software developer and maintaining a low profile that had kept her hidden for nearly 2 years. When Romanian police knocked on her apartment door, she didn't resist. She calmly packed a small bag, deleted files from her computer with practiced efficiency, and walked out of the building with the same quiet determination that had characterized her attack on Apex Exchange. During her interrogation, Drive, Vasquez showed no remorse for the chaos she had caused. She spoke eloquently about the fundamental contradictions in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, the false promises made by exchanges, and the need for users to take personal responsibility for their financial security. When asked about the millions of people who had lost money because of her actions, her response was chilling in its logic. She argued that they had willingly surrendered control of their cryptocurrency to a centralized institution, thereby abandoning the core principles that made digital currencies valuable in the first place. Their losses, she claimed, were the inevitable result of their failure to understand what they were investing in. The trial of Dr. Elena Vasquez became a global media sensation. Cryptocurrency enthusiasts debated whether she was a terrorist or a prophet. Traditional finance experts pointed to the Apex case as evidence that digital currencies were too dangerous for mainstream adoption. Regulators used her manifesto to justify increasingly strict oversight of the cryptocurrency industry. But perhaps the most profound impact of her actions was on the exchanges themselves. The silence that had fallen over Apex Exchange on that night in March had echoed through the entire industry. Companies that had once competed on convenience and user experience suddenly found themselves in an arms race over security features and transparency measures. New exchanges began implementing proof of reserve systems that would allow users to verify that their funds actually existed. Old exchanges retrofitted their systems with additional safeguards and redundancies. The industry developed new standards for employee background checks, insider threat detection, and psychological evaluation of personnel with access to critical systems. During her sentencing hearing, Vasquez was given the opportunity to address the court. She stood quietly for a long moment, looking out at the gallery filled with victims of her attack, law enforcement officials who had pursued her, and journalists who had covered every detail of her case. Her final statement was brief but haunting. "I gave you silence so that you might finally hear the truth about what you had built. The question is whether you were listening." The judge sentenced Elena Vasquez to 25 years in federal prison for wire fraud, computer fraud, and conspiracy charges. She would be eligible for parole in 15 years, assuming good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations into cryptocurrency security. As she was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom remained silent. The families who had lost their savings sat quietly, some crying, others simply staring at the woman who had changed their lives forever. The cryptocurrency executives in attendance were already planning new security measures, new policies, and new marketing campaigns to rebuild trust in their industry. Marcus Chen, who had testified during the trial about the technical details of the attack, watched from the back of the courtroom. He had found a new job at a smaller exchange, one that prioritized security over growth and transparency over profit margins. The experience at Apex had changed him, making him more cautious, more paranoid, and more aware of the human cost of technological failure. The Apex Exchange building still stands in the financial district, but it houses a different company now. The cryptocurrency exchange shut down permanently 6 months after the attack, unable to rebuild the trust necessary to attract new users or investors. The empty trading floor serves as a monument to the night when silence fell over the crypto world. Detective Rodriguez was promoted to head of the FBI's cryptocurrency crime unit, a position that didn't exist before the Apex case. She continues to investigate attacks on digital currency platforms, always looking for the patterns and motivations that might prevent the next devastating breach. The $800 million in cryptocurrency that Dr. Vasquez destroyed remains locked in unreachable addresses, a permanent reminder of the price paid for the lesson she tried to teach. Blockchain analysts estimate that these funds will remain inaccessible until quantum computing advances to the point where current cryptographic standards can be broken, an event that may not occur for decades. Some victims of the Apex Exchange attack received partial compensation through insurance claims and legal settlements, but most lost their savings permanently. Support groups formed in major cities around the world, where people who had trusted their financial futures to centralized cryptocurrency platforms could share their experiences and help each other rebuild. The cryptocurrency industry itself survived the Apex Exchange attack, but it emerged fundamentally changed. The Wild West atmosphere that had characterized the early days of digital currencies gave way to a more mature, regulated, and security-focused ecosystem. New exchanges launched with extensive audit requirements, government oversight, and insurance guarantees that provided real protection for user funds. But the question that Dr. Elena Vasquez had posed through her actions remained unanswered. Could a truly decentralized financial system coexist with the centralized institutions that most users required for convenience and security? Years later, as blockchain technology continued to evolve and new forms of decentralized finance emerged, the silence that had fallen over Apex Exchange that night in March continued to resonate through the industry. It served as a reminder that in a world where trust was enforced by mathematics rather than institutions, the greatest threats often came from those who understood the mathematics best. The crypto world had learned to listen to that silence, to understand the vulnerabilities it revealed, and to build better systems that could survive not just external attacks, but the betrayal of those trusted to protect them. The lesson drive Vasquez had taught through destruction was being applied through construction, one more secure transaction at a time. And somewhere in a federal prison, drive, Elena Vasquez continued to follow the cryptocurrency news, watching as the industry slowly implemented the changes she had tried to force through her devastating attack on Apex Exchange. Whether her methods had been justified would remain a matter of debate, but the silence she had created had finally given the crypto world the space it needed to hear the truth about what it had become and what it needed to be. The last entry in her prison journal, discovered years later, contained a single sentence that summarized her perspective on the entire Apex Exchange incident. Sometimes the only way to save something is to destroy it first. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Crypto. This is a work of entertainment created purely for entertainment.